Today is August 11, 1990, and this is the road to Kim. We will soon be crossing the Purgatory River. I'm taking video pictures as I drive. I've never tried this before. I thought it might be an interesting exercise. I especially wanted to get a picture of these two peaks up ahead. I remember them as landmarks from a long time ago. 50 miles later, we were still on the road to Kim, and there in the distance is Kim. There's the mesa that overlooks the skyline south of Kim. We're standing at a spot that was known as Eden View, and here is Eden View. Well, there's my tree that I planted in 1932. That's the old place. We're about a mile away, I guess. Here's the road from the highway leading up to the old place. This used to be a public road through here. Now there's a gate. This is the southwest corner of the property. We're going to go up and look around. I'm standing on the spot where I was born, January 1920. And there's my tree. And there's nothing here but prairie as far as you can see. The foundation of the old rock house. Right down there is where the chicken house stood. The house, it was about 150 feet down to the well, which is right down there. And the old barn stood right out in there. Here you can see some of the rocks left from the foundation of the old barn. You can see the remainder of the old windmill or well. It was 165 feet deep. Back up to the tree and where the house used to stand. Sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say that bare spot right there is where the old dugout stood, and that's where I was born. Here is a picture of the old half dugout, the spot where I was born. In the background you can see the chicken house. This picture was probably taken by my mother in about 1920. Later, Dad built this barn, and we lived upstairs until the rock house was finished. In the background, you can see the chicken house. This is the hole in the ground where I was born. That's the site of the old half dugout. Later, the hole was filled. This is the rock house under construction. On the left is my dad. Seated on the wall is me and my sister Goldia, and I have no idea who the other people are. This is a picture of me standing by the door of the rock house after it was finished. Well, here is the rock house after it was finished. It was one room, and as I recall, it was about 12 by 16 inside. This picture was probably taken late 23. And that's me in the foreground. As you can see, the barn now has an addition, and also the house. There was a one-room frame structure put on the front of the rock house, and that became the kitchen. This picture was probably taken late 1922. We're standing at the back of the rock house. That's Mom and Dad. Goldie is standing, and Dad's holding me in his lap. There weren't any toys to play with, so a stick became my hobby horse. Remainder of the barn foundation. These are tree cactus. very common in this area, but when I was a boy, this was all plowed field. Jackrabbits love those tree cactus. They run in there to hide from the hawks and the eagles. We were flying a kite here one time as a kid, and the kite got up over a jackrabbit out there, and he was scared to death. He tried his best to find some place to hide because he thought it was a hawk. Folks came here in 1919. This was all prairie like it is now. There's the southwest corner of the property, and Dad plowed all of this, much of it with a hand plow, walking hand plow, for a distance of 1 mile. Path back up to the tree and where the house used to stand. George Baker. There is Dad's signature on the old well cap. I can't quite make it out. I think that's July 31, 1923. I do remember a picture of me and Dad standing in front of the well when I was about 3 years old. And there's the cap again. Right over there is a depression where, as kids, we decided to build a swimming pool. What we discovered was that when we got down a bit, it was all sand, so there was no way it would ever hold water. The foundation of the old chicken house. And there's the trail up to that. I've only been back here twice before, since I left in 1939. Came back in 54 and again in 85. Today is August 11th, 1990. And I don't expect to return. I call this spot Ground Zero. Anyone born here started at Ground Zero. Looking to the southwest, there's Kim. Looking to the west, on a clear day you can see the Spanish Peaks up near Trinidad, part of the Rocky Mountains. We're looking west there. Nothing but prairie as far as you can see. There is Henry and Goldia and Dorothy, and they're going to have a look around. Remember the time when we were about 5 years old and we went on a picnic and we walked all the way over here to the lemon place about a mile away, and Mom was frightened and she finally found us coming home and she locked us there in the cellar. You remember that?
1920. Yeah.
It must have been 23.
I think it was 23 or something else you can't make out. Yeah, get to the other side. Go around this way, get the sun in his face. To stop it, you press the red button again.
Oh. It's recording. It says REC.
It is, huh? I think it's a lot of shadow there.
Well, that's probably enough for posterity.
You're a shadow person, huh?
Push the red button. This memento leaves me a bit confused. It is dated 1926. I remember the date of the sale, but in January 1926 I started a school and we were not living here. After the sale, we went back to Kansas for the summer where Dad worked in the wheat harvest, and then we came back to Kim. This picture was taken in front of the kitchen, which was the first addition to the old rock house. That's me on the left, and Mom wasn't too pleased with my clowning around. In the center is Goldia, and in front of her is Ira holding that little chair. On the right is Earl. When we returned from Kansas, we lived in a two-room tar paper shack, which is known as the Harv Goodrich place, about a mile east of the old place. Then Dad built this three-room house on the east end of the old place, and that's where I started to grade school. I think it was. Later, Dad moved the house into Kim, and it stood somewhere about here. Kim, we moved back to the country. This is the Clyde Salmon's place, and that's where Alvin was born. In 1928, we moved back to the old place. Dad put this 3-room addition onto the old kitchen and rock house, and that's where we all grew up. Recently, I found this Certificate of Achievement, 4-H Club, and the Pig Club, complete with picture. In the upper left-hand corner, the 4-H pin is still attached. All that I remember is that Earl's pig had 6 little ones, and my sow only had 2. The date is 1932, when I was 12 years old. This is my pinto pony, Dolly. Dad took her in on a bad debt for $25. That was a princely sum in those days when wages were $1 a day. I think Earl was always a bit envious, but I don't think Dad could have afforded another horse. In the background there you can see the old well and the cottonwood tree. Well, this is a picture, which you can barely see, of what I call my tractor. You can see the remains of the old cottonwood tree. Well, in 1932, when I was 12 years old, Dad was farming almost 500 acres. He not only had his own property, but he rented a place south of there with a half section, or 320 acres. And then he got rheumatism, and he could hardly get out of bed. I couldn't handle his big tractor, so he bought the small one and put me on it. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening every day for the summer. And Dad said later, I saved the farm. But in the mid-1930s, the drought was in full force, and Kim became part of the Dust Bowl. In the foreground is a portion of Kim. In the background, you can see a dust cloud rolling in from the east. And when it hit, it was like midnight. There was dust everywhere. Much of the topsoil was blown away, and the land became rather useless for farming. So in 1939, the government bought up hundreds of square miles of this land and put it back into pasture. Today, it's known as the Comanche grasslands. In 1954, this is a picture of our mother standing in front of the tree. Also in 1954, Susan, Terry, and Randy. 1985, I'm standing on the spot where I was born. On the back of this picture is one word which appears to be in Goldia's handwriting, and it simply reads, home. This picture was taken in front of her home. Must be vintage about 1935. Left to right, Alvin Lee, Ira Benner, Earl Russell Baker. This picture is mid-30s. We are also standing in front of the tree. In the front row, left to right, is Goldia and me. My tree, which you can see there in the background at this point in time, was about 4 years old. The old place still looks much the same as this picture in 1923. The difference is that Dad's cottonwood tree down by the well is now almost as high as the windmill, and my tree up in front of the house is well on its way. This picture from 1954 is Randy and Terry in front of the foundation of the old rock house. The house just to the south of us there in the distance used to be our house, and it stood right here. When the government bought this land in 1939, it sold off or took away all the buildings, and the house was sold to the property south of here. At that time it was still privately owned. We're looking south from the old place. Looking to the southwest, there's Kim. There's the house that I grew up in. It's now about a half-mile south of the old place. It's been moved, as I mentioned before. This is all one large pasture now. Right down there is an interesting spot. It's a low spot, and you might think in this dry country there wouldn't be any great amount of life down there. But in the spring of the year, that used to fill with water, and you'd hear frogs down there all night long. We're on a high ridge here, and water that falls on the south side flows south into the Cimarron. Anything on the north side of this slope flows north into the Arkansas. Well, this is the house where I grew up as a teenager. I can't believe how small it is. I remember helping my dad shingle that, and he said, "You get those straight now because people will be looking those for years to come." Part of the house was the second addition to the old rock house. The part at the back here was the kitchen, and that was the addition to the original rock house, which of course they tore down. This is the windmill on this property. I remember my dad bringing his tractor down here to raise the tower. And even though the wells are deep, as you can see, there's lots of water, and there's usually enough breeze to turn the mill. Now, this house was moved probably in 1940 to this location, and I think it was lived in for a number of years, but I suspect it's now been vacant for probably since about 1950 or 60 at the latest. This is the road down to the main highway. It's a half mile. We used to walk this every day to school, go down there a half mile, turn and go 1 mile east to the Prairie Star Schoolhouse. Here's the foundation of the old Prairie Star Schoolhouse where I went to grade school. The schoolhouse is gone. That was a building put up initially for children who rode horses to school. Later it was enlarged and it became a cafeteria or lunchroom. There's nothing here except prairie. Well, here you can see the foundation of the old schoolhouse. We didn't have anything to play with around here, so we played marbles, and I played many a game of marbles right there, right here in the schoolyard. Off there in the distance, you can see the mesas to the south. They're about 150, 200 feet were the outhouses. The boys' house was right about there, and the girls' was over there in the corner of the schoolyard. And this is Prairie Star Schoolhouse. Well, here's the highway looking west. From here to get back to the old place, it's 1 mile west and a half mile north. And there in the distance, up on the hill, you can see the old house. We are still on the road to Kim, and there in the distance is Kim. This is the south end of town on the highway, and in 1926 we had a house somewhere right out there. This building used to be the grade school, and that's where I went to second grade. It's now the center for the senior citizens. There's the old gym. Well, this used to be the main street of Kim. Right. There used to be a filling station there, and the post office is right up there. Maybe it still is. There was a drugstore up there.
Was printed.
Well, there used to be a garage on that corner, and the Kim Mercantile Company was somewhere along here. And there was Charlie Rouse grocery store. There was a drugstore up there somewhere. Now this looks like the old bank building, vintage 1930s, but it's been, if it is, it's been changed. Traffic. There's a car coming.